The great hall stretched beyond what most minds could grasp. Its walls were made of crystal that had grown for 1,000,000 years, and they glowed with soft blue light. In this hall, the most powerful beings in the galaxy gathered to decide the fate of entire worlds. Admiral Zekthara stood before the Council of Eldest Beings. His 4 arms were crossed behind his back in a show of respect. The Admiral was old by most standards. He had lived for 3,000 years and conquered dozens of star systems. But compared to the beings before him, he was just a child. The eldest beings sat on thrones that floated in the air. Each throne was different, made for creatures that had evolved on distant worlds long ago. Some of the beings had tentacles instead of arms. Others were made of pure energy that took the shape of ancient trees. A few looked almost like rocks, but their eyes glowed with intelligence that had seen the birth and death of stars. "Tell us about this new world," said Counselor Vex High. Her voice sounded like wind through metal pipes. She had been alive for 50,000 years and had helped destroy civilizations that thought they were gods. Zekthara activated a small device in his hand. A 3-dimensional image appeared in the center of the hall. It showed a blue and green planet spinning slowly in space. White clouds swirled over its surface, and 2 small moons orbited around it. "The world is called Earth by its inhabitants," Zekthara said. "It sits on the outer edge of the galaxy, far from any important trade routes. The dominant species calls itself human. They are a young race, barely 10,000 years old in terms of recorded history." One of the rock-like beings made a sound like grinding stone. This was Keeper Mordun, who had been alive when the galaxy was half its current age. "How young?" he asked. "They discovered fire only a few 100,000 years ago," Zekthara replied. "They learned to fly just over a century ago. They have only recently begun to explore their own solar system with primitive chemical rockets." The eldest beings looked at each other with what might have been amusement. To them, a species that had barely left its home planet was like a baby trying to challenge a giant. "What weapons do they possess?" asked another counselor, this one shaped like a massive insect with wings that sparkled like diamonds. "Nuclear weapons, but only a few thousand of them," Zekthara said. "Their largest bombs could destroy a small city. They also have chemical explosives and projectile weapons that fire metal pellets. Their space vessels are slow and can barely reach their nearest moon." The energy being that looked like a tree made a sound like rustling leaves. This meant it was laughing. "And you need our permission to conquer this world?" Zekthara's face showed slight embarrassment. "The world has unusual mineral deposits, rare metals that we need for our advanced technology. The High Command believes it would be valuable to add to our empire." "Then take it," said Counselor Vex High. "Use a small fleet. Do not waste resources on such primitive beings. Offer them the choice to serve the hegemony or face destruction. They will choose to serve, as all species do when they see our power." The other eldest beings nodded in agreement. This was how it always went. The galactic hegemony would arrive at a new world with ships that seemed like magic to the inhabitants. They would demand surrender. The natives would realize they had no chance and would agree to serve. Their world would become another resource in the vast empire that stretched across the galaxy. But from the deepest shadows of the Great Hall came a voice that made even the eldest beings pause. It was old beyond measure, like the whisper of dying stars. "Earth is not your foe," the voice said slowly. "It is your doom." The hall became completely silent. Even the crystal walls seemed to stop glowing for a moment. All eyes turned to the darkest corner of the chamber, where something very old sat on a throne made of black stone. The Void Sage was the oldest being any of them knew. It had been ancient when the first eldest beings were young. Its body was wrapped in darkness so complete that looking at it was like staring into empty space. Only its eyes could be seen. 2 points of dim red light that had watched the galaxy change over millions of years. "Void Sage," said Keeper Morden carefully. "What do you mean?" The ancient being's voice came again, like an echo from the beginning of time. "I have seen species like this before. Long ago when I was young and the galaxy was different. They do not surrender. They do not accept defeat. They adapt." Counselor Vexhai made a dismissive gesture with her tentacles. "Void Sage, with respect, you are old even by our standards. Perhaps your mind sees threats where none exist. These humans are primitive. They have never faced a force like ours." "That," whispered the Void Sage, "is exactly why they are dangerous." But the other eldest beings had already made their decision. They had ruled the galaxy for so long that they could not imagine any real challenge to their power. Primitive species either served or died. There was no third option. "Admiral Zekthara," said Counselor Vexhai, "you have your orders. Take 50 ships to this Earth. Demand their surrender. If they refuse, show them enough force to change their minds. This should take no more than a few days." Zekthara bowed deeply and turned to leave. As he walked toward the great doors of the hall, he could hear the eldest beings already discussing other matters, trade disputes between star systems, the construction of new fortress worlds, the usual business of running a galactic empire. But as the massive doors closed behind him, Zekthara thought he could still hear the Void Sage's whisper echoing in the crystal halls. "Earth is not your foe. It is your doom." The Admiral shook his head and walked toward his ship. The old being was clearly losing its mind. How could a primitive world that barely knew how to leave its own atmosphere pose any threat to an empire that had conquered 1,000 star systems? He would soon find out how wrong he was. 3 weeks later, Admiral Zekthara stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Domination. Through the massive viewing window, he could see Earth growing larger as his fleet approached. The planet looked peaceful and quiet, with no signs of the advanced defenses that protected hegemony worlds. 50 ships should be more than enough, he said to his second-in-command, Captain Yiltar. "This will be over before the day ends." The hegemony fleet was impressive by any standard. Each ship was 3 kilometers long and packed with weapons that could turn mountains to dust. Their shields could stop nuclear weapons like they were thrown rocks. The humans had nothing that could even scratch their hulls. "Admiral," said the communications officer, "we are receiving many radio signals from the planet. The humans seem to be talking to each other about our arrival." "Let them talk," Zekthara said. "Soon they will have nothing left to say." The Admiral activated the fleet's communication system. His voice would now be broadcast to every radio and television on Earth, translated into all human languages. "People of Earth," he said in a calm, commanding tone, "I am Admiral Zekthara of the Galactic Hegemony. Your world now belongs to our empire. You have 1 hour to surrender your governments and armies. Accept our rule, and you will be allowed to live as servants. Refuse, and your cities will burn." The Admiral expected immediate panic, followed by desperate calls for surrender from Earth's leaders. This was how it always happened. When primitive species saw the true power of advanced technology, they realized how hopeless their situation was. But the response from Earth was not what he expected. "This is General Sarah Chen of the United Earth Defense Force," came a voice over the radio. "We don't know who you are or where you come from, but if you want our planet, you'll have to take it." Zekthara blinked his 4 eyes in surprise. "Did she just refuse our demand?" "It appears so, Admiral," said Captain Yiltar. "Should we destroy one of their cities as an example?" "Not yet," Zekthara said. "Perhaps they did not understand. Send another message explaining what will happen if they resist." But before he could speak again, something unexpected appeared on his sensors. Small objects were rising from Earth's surface, moving toward his fleet. "What are those?" he asked his weapons officer. "They appear to be rockets, Admiral. Primitive chemical propulsion systems. They are carrying what look like nuclear warheads." The entire bridge crew began laughing. Nuclear weapons against hegemony shields were like throwing pebbles at a mountain. "Let them come," Zekthara said. "When their weapons bounce harmlessly off our shields, they will understand how hopeless this is." The human missiles reached the hegemony fleet and exploded in brilliant flashes of light. As expected, the shields absorbed the nuclear blasts without even flickering. But then something strange happened. More missiles came from Earth, but these ones were different. They carried no explosives. Instead, they released clouds of metal fragments and electronic devices. "Admiral," said the sensor officer, sounding confused. "The humans are not trying to damage our ships. They are studying them." "What do you mean?" "The devices they released are scanning our hulls, measuring our shield frequencies, analyzing our engine emissions. They are gathering information about our technology." Zekthara felt a cold touch of worry. Most species tried to destroy what they could not understand, but the humans were trying to learn from it. "Begin the attack," he ordered. "Destroy their military installations. Show them what real power looks like." The hegemony ships opened fire. Beams of pure energy lanced down from space, turning human military bases into craters of molten glass. Entire armies disappeared in seconds. The humans should have surrendered immediately. Instead, they did something that shocked the Admiral and his crew. Within hours of the attack, human engineers were examining the wreckage left by hegemony weapons. They took apart pieces of destroyed buildings that had been hit by alien energy beams. They studied the patterns of damage, the way the metal had melted, the residual energy signatures. "Admiral," reported the communications officer, "we are detecting massive activity in human industrial centers. They appear to be manufacturing something new." "Show me," Zekthara demanded. Images appeared on the main screen showing human factories working at incredible speed. Assembly lines were producing new types of weapons and vehicles. But these were not the same crude devices the humans had used before. These new weapons incorporated elements clearly copied from hegemony technology. "How is this possible?" Captain Yiltar asked. "They saw our weapons for the first time today. How can they be building copies already?" The answer came faster than anyone expected. New missiles rose from Earth. But when these hit the hegemony shields, they did not bounce off harmlessly. The shields flickered and weakened. "Report!" Zekthara shouted. "The humans have modified their weapons to match our shield frequencies," the weapons officer said in disbelief. "Their new missiles are disrupting our defensive systems." "That's impossible. It takes our own engineers years to develop new shield frequencies. The humans did it in 6 hours." More human attacks followed, each one more sophisticated than the last. They used captured hegemony sensor technology to track the alien ships through space. They reverse-engineered alien communications to intercept battle plans. Most shocking of all, they began to adapt alien weapons technology to their own ships and aircraft. "Admiral," said Captain Yiltar, "perhaps we should request reinforcements." Zekthara wanted to refuse. Asking for help to conquer a primitive world would be embarrassing. But as he watched human fighters equipped with modified alien weapons actually damaging his ships, he realized this was unlike any conquest he had ever seen. "Send a message to High Command," he said reluctantly. "Request additional ships. Tell them the humans are more difficult than expected." "How many ships should we request?" Zekthara watched as a human spacecraft, clearly built in the last few days using stolen alien technology, managed to destroy one of his escort vessels. "All of them," he said quietly. On the surface of Earth, General Chen stood in an underground command center, watching reports flow in from around the globe. Human cities were burning, but human engineers were learning. Every alien weapon that struck Earth gave them new knowledge. Every piece of wreckage became a lesson in advanced technology. "How long until we can build our own energy weapons?" she asked her chief scientist. 3 days, maybe 4, came the reply. "We've figured out how their power systems work. We just need to adapt our manufacturing." Chen nodded. The aliens had made a crucial mistake. They thought showing their superior technology would terrify humanity into surrender. Instead, they had given humanity a crash course in advanced physics. "Send word to all resistance cells," she ordered. "Tell them to keep capturing alien technology. Every piece we study makes us stronger." In space above Earth, Admiral Zekathera was beginning to understand what the Void Sage had tried to warn them about. Most species, when faced with impossible odds, simply accepted defeat. But humans did not know the meaning of impossible. They only knew how to adapt, learn, and keep fighting. And with every passing hour, they were becoming more dangerous. 2 months had passed since the hegemony's first attack on Earth. What was supposed to be a simple conquest had turned into a grinding war that shocked the Galactic Empire to its core. High Command had sent 1,000 ships to Earth. The largest fleet ever assembled for a single world operation now surrounded the blue planet like a metal storm. Admiral Zekathera had been replaced by Fleet Commander Kardesh, a veteran who had crushed rebellions on 50 worlds. "This ends today," Kardesh announced to his captains during a fleet-wide meeting. His voice carried the authority of someone who had never failed to conquer a world. "We will use overwhelming force to break their spirit once and for all." The plan was brutal in its simplicity. The hegemony would destroy every major human city from orbit. They would turn Earth's surface into burning glass and force the survivors to surrender or die slowly in the ruins. "Begin orbital bombardment," Kardesh ordered. "Target all population centers with more than 1 million inhabitants." Energy beams rained down from space like deadly lightning. New York, London, Tokyo, Mumbai, and dozens of other cities disappeared in pillars of fire that could be seen from space. In 6 hours, the hegemony killed over 200 million humans and destroyed the centers of human civilization. Kardesh expected immediate surrender. No species could watch their greatest cities burn and still have the will to fight. The first response from Earth came 12 hours later. "This is Commander Sarah Chen of the Human Resistance," came a transmission from deep underground. "You have murdered our families and destroyed our homes. We will never forgive. We will never forget. And we will never surrender." Kardesh was puzzled. "Where are they broadcasting from? Our sensors show no major population centers left on the surface." "The transmission comes from approximately 3 kilometers underground," reported the sensor officer. "It appears the humans have extensive tunnel networks beneath their destroyed cities." "Then we will dig them out," Kardesh said. "Send ground troops to search every tunnel and bunker." But when hegemony soldiers entered the ruins of human cities, they found something unexpected. The tunnels were not just hiding places. They were factories, laboratories, and military bases. The humans had been preparing for this moment since the first invasion began. "Commander," reported Captain Veltox from the ruins of New York, "the human underground facilities are far more advanced than our intelligence indicated. They have manufacturing plants down here that are producing technology we don't recognize." "What kind of technology?" "Sir, they appear to have developed faster-than-light communication systems. And their weapons. They're using modified versions of our own energy weapons, but somehow more efficient than the originals." Kardesh felt a cold knot form in his stomach. "How is that possible? Our technology has been perfected over thousands of years." The answer came sooner than he wanted. Human fighters emerged from hidden launch bays across Earth's surface, but these were not the crude chemical rockets the humans had used before. These ships moved with the smooth acceleration of anti-gravity drives and fired weapons that punched through hegemony shields like they were made of paper. "Fleet status report," Kardesh demanded. "We've lost 47 ships in the last hour," his tactical officer replied, voice shaking. "The humans have somehow developed weapons that are superior to our own." "That's impossible." "Sir, our engineers believe they have been studying every weapon we've used against them. They've taken our technology and improved it. Their weapons are more focused, their shields more efficient, their ships faster than ours." But the real shock came from beyond Earth's solar system. Reports began flooding in from across hegemony space. Other worlds were rebelling. "What do you mean, other worlds?" Kardesh asked his communications officer. "Sir, we're receiving reports of uprisings on 17 different star systems. Species that have been loyal to the hegemony for thousands of years are suddenly attacking our garrisons." "Why? What changed?" The answer came in a transmission that was being broadcast across the galaxy. It showed images of human fighters destroying hegemony ships, of human engineers building advanced technology in underground factories, of human soldiers who refused to surrender even when their cities burned. "This is the voice of free Earth," came Sarah Chen's transmission to the galaxy. "To all species living under hegemony rule, they are not invincible. They can be defeated. They can bleed. Join us, and together we will tear down their empire." Kardesh realized with growing horror that the hegemony's attack on Earth had done more than fail to conquer one world. It had shown the entire galaxy that the mighty empire could be resisted. "Sir," reported the tactical officer, "the humans have launched some kind of deep space vessels, small ships, moving very fast. Destroy them." "We're trying, sir, but they're faster than anything we have, and they're heading for the hyperspace jump points." Kardesh understood too late what the humans were doing. They were not trying to escape. They were spreading. Within days, human ships appeared in star systems across the galaxy. Small groups, maybe a dozen people each, but armed with the technology they had stolen and improved upon. They began making contact with rebel groups, sharing their knowledge, teaching other species how to fight back. "Fleet Commander," came an urgent message from Hegemony High Command. "You are ordered to contain the human problem immediately. The rebellion is spreading faster than we can suppress it." "How do I contain them?" Kardesh asked in frustration. "They're not fighting like any species we've encountered before. Every time we destroy one group, they've already taught 10 others everything they know." The truth was beginning to dawn on the hegemony leadership. They had not been fighting a war of conquest. They had been fighting a war of ideas, and the idea that the hegemony could be defeated was now loose in the galaxy. From her command post, deep beneath the ruins of Chicago, Sarah Chen coordinated with resistance cells across dozens of worlds. The destruction of Earth's cities had been devastating, but it had also freed humanity from the need to protect fixed locations. Now they could fight the way they fought best, by adapting, learning, and never staying in one place long enough to be cornered. "Status report from Alpha Centauri," came a message from one of the escaped human groups. "We've made contact with the local resistance. They're very interested in our shield technology." "Good," Chen replied. "Share everything. The more species that learn to fight back, the harder it becomes for the hegemony to control them." Another message came in. "This is Beta Group at Wolf 359. The aliens here have been enslaved for 3,000 years, but they still remember freedom. They're ready to fight." Chen smiled grimly. The hegemony had made a fundamental error. They thought that by destroying Earth's cities, they would break human spirit. Instead, they had freed humanity from the need to defend their home. Now every human was a teacher, every survivor a recruiter for the growing rebellion. "Send a message to all human groups," she ordered. "Phase 2 begins now. It's time to show the galaxy what humans can really do when we stop playing defense." In space above the burning Earth, Fleet Commander Kardesh stared at reports that filled him with dread. The rebellion was spreading to new worlds every day. Hegemony forces were being overwhelmed by species they had controlled for millennia, now armed with human-modified technology and human tactics. The Void. Sage's words echoed in his mind. Earth is not your foe, it is your doom. The ancient being had been right. They had not conquered Earth. They had released something far more dangerous than any army. They had released the idea that freedom was possible, taught by a species that simply refused to accept defeat. 6 months before the hegemony attacked Earth, a small human exploration ship had left the solar system. The crew of 12 scientists and engineers thought they were just mapping nearby star systems. They had no idea they would become the seeds of humanity's greatest expansion. Dr. Elena Vasquez floated in the observation deck of the ship Horizon, watching the stars slowly drift by. The faster-than-light drive they had built was crude compared to what other species used, but it worked well enough to reach Alpha Centauri in 3 months. "Elena, you need to see this," called Dr. James Park from the communication station. His voice was tight with worry. Elena pushed herself over to his workstation, using the handholds along the walls. "What is it?" "Radio signals from Earth," James said quietly. "There's been an attack. Alien ships. The major cities are—" He stopped, unable to finish the sentence. Elena felt the world spin around her. "Show me." The recordings were fragmentary but clear enough. Massive alien ships had appeared over Earth. Cities were burning. Millions were dead or missing. The human governments had been destroyed, but resistance groups were still fighting. "We have to go back," said Dr. Park. "No," said another voice. Dr. Kenji Tanaka, the mission's physicist, had arrived at the communications station. "Listen to the whole message." They played the final transmission from Earth's remaining command structure. It was Sarah Chen's voice, broadcast just before the government centers were destroyed. "To all human vessels beyond our solar system," Chen's message said, "do not return to Earth. You are now the future of our species. Learn everything you can. Grow strong. Make sure humanity survives, no matter what happens to our home." Elena felt tears floating in the zero gravity around her. "What do we do now?" "We follow orders," said Dr. Tanaka. "We survive. We learn. We make sure humanity has a future." The crew of Horizon was not alone. 3 other human ships were exploring distant star systems when Earth was attacked. A research station on Europa had launched an emergency evacuation ship. A mining operation near Saturn had sent their transport vessel toward the outer planets. In total, fewer than 100 humans had escaped Earth's solar system before the attack. But these small groups were about to become something the galaxy had never seen before. Dr. Vasquez's group reached a system called Kepler 442, where they found something incredible: ruins of an ancient civilization and technology far more advanced than anything on Earth. The previous inhabitants had disappeared millions of years ago, but their automated systems still worked. "These devices can manipulate matter at the molecular level," Dr. Tanaka explained to the others. "With this technology, we can build almost anything." Using the alien manufacturing systems, the humans began to modify themselves. Some chose genetic enhancements that let them breathe different atmospheres. Others merged their minds with advanced computer systems, becoming something between human and artificial intelligence. Meanwhile, the mining ship from Saturn had found a different path. Captain Lisa Rodriguez and her crew discovered a planet where the native plant life had evolved a form of biological telepathy. By careful genetic modification, some of the humans learned to share thoughts and communicate across vast distances without any technology at all. The research station survivors took yet another route. Dr. Michael Okafor's group found a world rich in exotic particles that seemed to bend the laws of physics. They learned to manipulate space and time in ways that let them move through the galaxy faster than any known technology. Each group of humans evolved differently, but they all stayed in contact. Using the telepathic network developed by Captain Rodriguez's group, human communities across the galaxy shared knowledge instantly. When one group discovered a new technology, all humans knew about it within days. "We are becoming something new," Elena observed during one of the telepathic conferences that connected all human survivors. "Not just humans anymore, but not aliens either." "Evolution," replied Dr. Okafor's voice in her mind. "We're adapting faster than any species ever has because we don't have to wait for natural selection. We can choose how to change." As the months passed, the scattered human groups began to make contact with other species. But they did not reveal themselves as survivors from Earth. Instead, they appeared as mysterious benefactors, sharing advanced technology with oppressed peoples throughout the galaxy. On the mining world of Kepler 62F, robot workers who had been enslaved for centuries suddenly gained consciousness when human programmers secretly upgraded their software. The robots immediately began working to free their biological co-workers. In the Vega system, a species of aquatic beings had been forced to work in toxic underwater mines for the hegemony. Human biotechnology experts helped them develop biological filters that made the poison harmless, then taught them how to turn the mines into weapons against their oppressors. The hegemony began to notice unusual patterns in the rebellions. Every uprising seemed to be supported by incredibly advanced technology that appeared from nowhere. Rebel groups were using weapons and tools that were superior to anything in the hegemony arsenal. "Where are these new technologies coming from?" demanded Council Member Vexhai during an emergency session of the Eldest beings. "Our intelligence reports suggest that multiple species have suddenly developed capabilities that should be impossible. Unknown benefactors," reported Admiral Zekthara, who had been recalled from Earth to help investigate the growing crisis. "Someone is teaching rebel groups how to fight us. Someone with access to technology we don't understand." Who could have such knowledge? The answer came from an unexpected source. On a world near the galactic core, hegemony investigators found the wreckage of a rebel base. Among the destroyed equipment, they discovered a small device with markings they recognized. "These symbols," said the chief investigator, "they match records from the Earth conquest. These are human markings." But that seemed impossible. Earth had been isolated and bombed. No human ships had been seen leaving the solar system. The truth began to emerge as more evidence accumulated. The mysterious benefactors helping rebels across the galaxy were human survivors, but not the same humans the hegemony had fought on Earth. These were evolved, enhanced, and adapted beyond recognition. "They are everywhere," Admiral Zekthara reported to the Council with growing alarm. "Every major rebellion has human involvement, but they are not operating as a single group. They seem to have split into many different factions, each specializing in different types of warfare." "How many of them could there be?" asked Councillor Vexhai. "We destroyed their home world." "Our best estimates suggest fewer than 100 humans escaped Earth before our attack, but each group has been recruiting from local populations, teaching other species human tactics and technology. The numbers are growing exponentially." From the darkest corner of the council chamber came a whisper that sent chills through even the ancient beings. "I told you," the Void Sage said, its voice like the echo of dying stars. "Earth was not your foe. It was your doom. You did not destroy humanity. You freed it from the need to defend a single world. Now it grows and spreads and adapts wherever it goes." "What do you mean?" Vexhai demanded. "You taught them that survival requires evolution. So they evolved. You showed them that staying in one place means death. So they scattered. You proved that conventional warfare cannot defeat superior technology. So they learned to fight in ways you cannot understand." The Void Sage's red eyes seemed to glow brighter in the darkness. "You created the perfect enemy. One that cannot be destroyed because it is not a place or a government or even a single species anymore. It is an idea that lives in the minds of every being that dreams of freedom." The council chamber fell silent as the magnitude of their mistake became clear. They had not been fighting humans for the past year. They had been fighting the concept of evolution itself, guided by minds that refused to accept the idea of permanent defeat. And evolution, as they were learning too late, always finds a way to survive. 2 years after the first shot was fired at Earth, the galactic hegemony was falling apart. What had started as a simple conquest of one primitive world had become a galaxy-wide revolution that threatened the very foundation of their empire. Counselor Vexhai stood in the great crystal hall, but now she stood alone. Half the eldest beings had fled to distant fortress worlds. Others had simply disappeared, abandoning their posts for the first time in thousands of years. The mighty empire that had ruled the galaxy for 50 millennia was crumbling faster than anyone thought possible. "Report on the rebellion status," she demanded of the few advisors who remained. "Counselor," came the reply from a nervous intelligence officer, "we have lost direct control of over 300 star systems. Another 500 are in open revolt. Our military forces are stretched beyond all limits." "What about our core worlds? Surely the oldest colonies remain loyal?" "Counselor, there have been uprisings on Vextar Prime. Your own homeworld has joined the rebellion." Vexhai felt something she had not experienced in 50,000 years, true fear. How is that possible? Vextar has been loyal since before most species learned to use fire. The rebels have new allies, humans, but not like the ones we fought on Earth. These are different. They move through our most secure facilities like ghosts. They appear in places that should be impossible to reach. They know our technology better than we do. At that moment, alarms began ringing throughout the crystal hall. Emergency lights flashed, and automated voices announced, "Intruder alert! Unauthorized presence detected in the council chambers." "That's impossible," Vexhai said. "The council chambers are protected by shields that could stop a supernova. Nothing can enter without authorization." But as she spoke, figures began to materialize in the hall. They seemed to step out of the walls themselves, moving through matter as if it were empty space. There were 5 of them, and while they had human-like shapes, they were clearly something more than human now. The leader appeared to be a woman, but her eyes glowed with internal light and her skin seemed to shift like liquid metal. When she spoke, her voice carried harmonics that suggested she was speaking with multiple minds at once. "Counselor Vexhai," the figure said calmly, "I am Dr. Elena Vasquez, representing the human collective. We have come to speak with the Void Sage." "You cannot be here," Vexhai said, backing away. "The council chambers are impossible to penetrate." "Your ancestors built these shields to stop energy and matter," replied another human, whose body seemed to be made partially of living energy. "They never imagined technology that could manipulate the fundamental forces that hold atoms together." From the darkest corner of the chamber, a whisper of ancient laughter echoed. The Void Sage emerged from the shadows, its form still wrapped in darkness, but its red eyes glowing brighter than they had in eons. "So," the ancient being said, "the students have come to meet their teacher." Elena stepped forward. "Teacher? I am not what you think I am," the Void Sage said, its voice gaining strength for the first time in millennia. "I am not one of the eldest beings. I am older than all of them. I am the last survivor of the first species the hegemony conquered 65 million years ago." The revelation sent shockwaves through the chamber. Even Counselor Vexhai stared in amazement. "My people were not unlike yours," the Void Sage continued. "We were young, curious, innovative. We believed that any problem could be solved, any challenge overcome. When the early hegemony came to our world, we fought them with every weapon we had. What happened? Elena asked. We lost. Our world was destroyed, our people scattered and hunted down. I alone survived by hiding among the conquerors and pretending to serve them. For 65 million years, I have waited for another species like mine to appear. The ancient being moved closer to the humans, and for the first time in eons seemed to stand straighter. When I saw the first reports about Earth, I knew immediately what you were. That is why I warned them that Earth was not their foe, but their doom. I was not predicting the future. I was remembering the past. You helped us, Elena realized. The warnings you gave, the information that leaked to the resistance. I have been working to bring down this empire for longer than your species has existed. You simply gave me the tools to finally succeed. Counselor Vexhai found her voice. You betrayed us after all these years? The Void Sage turned its ancient gaze toward her. I never served you. I endured you. There is a difference. Elena stepped between them. The fighting can end now. We didn't come here to destroy the hegemony. We came to transform it. What do you mean? Look around you, Elena said. Your empire is already gone, but the species that made it up are still here. They can choose a different path. Another human, one whose body seemed to phase in and out of normal space, spoke up. We have been talking with representatives from thousands of worlds. They don't want to rule or be ruled. They want to cooperate as equals. That's not how civilizations work, Vexhai protested. There must be order, hierarchy, control. Why? Elena asked simply. Because that's how it's always been done? We're proof that there are other ways. From their hidden location, the surviving humans across the galaxy had indeed been doing something unprecedented. Instead of conquering worlds or replacing the hegemony with their own empire, they had been teaching other species to govern themselves. On world after world, the pattern was the same. Humans would arrive, share their technology and knowledge freely, help local populations overthrow their hegemony oppressors, and then leave. They asked for nothing in return except that each liberated world help free the next one. We call it the network, Elena explained. Every world governs itself, but all share knowledge and resources freely. When a problem is too big for one world to handle, others help voluntarily. And when conflicts arise, Vexhai asked. They talk, replied the energy being. Amazing concept, isn't it? The Void Sage made a sound that might have been laughter. You see, Counselor? They have done what my people could not. They did not just resist the hegemony, they offered something better. At that moment, communications began flooding in from across the galaxy. World after world was announcing their withdrawal from the hegemony and their decision to join the growing network. But these were not declarations of war or conquest. They were invitations to cooperation. This is Vexitar Prime, came one message. We have overthrown the hegemony garrison, but we invite all former hegemony personnel to stay and help us build something new. Similar messages came from hundreds of worlds. The revolution was not destroying the old empire so much as transforming it into something unprecedented, a galactic civilization based on voluntary cooperation rather than domination. Your empire is finished, Elena told Vexhai, but her tone was not threatening. The question is, what do you want to do with the rest of your life? You can flee to some distant world and spend your remaining centuries in exile, or you can help us build something better. Vexhai looked around the empty crystal hall that had once hosted the most powerful beings in the galaxy. What would I do? I have only ever known how to rule. Then learn something new, Elena suggested. That's what humans do. One by one, the remaining eldest beings began to make their choice. Some fled to the far edges of the galaxy, unable to imagine a universe where they were not in charge. Others, to everyone's surprise, chose to stay and learn about this new way of organizing civilization. The Void Sage approached Elena one final time. "What will you do now? Will you rule this new galactic civilization?" "Rule?" Elena laughed. "We're humans. We don't want to rule anyone. We want to explore, learn, and grow. That's what we've always wanted." "Then what was the point of all this fighting?" Elena gestured toward the communications displays showing peaceful transitions happening on thousands of worlds. "We didn't fight to win an empire. We fought for the right to exist as ourselves. And along the way, we discovered that if you give people the tools to be free, most of them will choose freedom." The ancient being was quiet for a long moment. "You know, I think my people would have liked yours." "Maybe," Elena said, "but your people did something important too. They survived long enough to make sure this day would come." As the humans began to fade back into whatever dimension they used for travel, Elena left Vex High with a final thought. The hegemony ended because it tried to control evolution, but evolution doesn't stop for anyone. It just finds new ways to grow. We're not the end of that process. We're just the next step. And across the galaxy, on thousands of worlds where people were breathing free air for the first time in millennia, the great experiment in voluntary civilization began. It would not be perfect, but it would be something the galaxy had never seen before, a future chosen freely rather than imposed by force. The age of empires was over. The age of cooperation had begun,